Welcome to another edition of the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. We are in the Giants podcast studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. And we are thrilled to welcome in, which has become a yearly tradition for us, when Albert Breer is on his training camp tour. He visits the Giants, and he always comes on and jumps on our platform. Albert, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm a little tired, but we're almost done here. So this is actually my last stop. It's 26 in the book. So
26 at 32, that's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad. 25 is usually my target, so I just got one over it this time.
And we got to 26. That's great. We appreciate you doing this. Of course, if you want to keep track of what's going on at camp, I love your little 4 or 5 little notebooks,
yep.
Which is great. You can find that on Monday Morning Quarterback, of course, on Sports Illustrated, and of course also the host of the MMQB podcast as well. So what's your kind of feel as you're about to depart Giants camp after spending a day here?
I mean, I think that there's a good positive vibe, which you'd hope. You don't want to be at this point with less than 2 weeks to the opener and you aren't feeling good about where you're at.
I was going to say, if you're a team in August, you better feel positive now, because...
But I mean, you can still kind of pick up on vibes. If you've been doing it for as long as I have, you kind of get an idea of where a team is at, some of the cues to look for. And I think one thing that you do here is that I think so much of it's going to come down to what they're doing at the lines of scrimmage, and but they feel really optimistic about where they are with both groups. Now, obviously, I think there'd be, for the public, more optimism about where the defensive front is versus the offensive front with the 3 rushers they have, obviously, and Burns and Thibodeau and Abdul Carter coming in, Dexter Lawrence. But the offensive line, I think it's you hold your breath that Andrew Thomas can get back on the field and stay healthy. But if he's back out there, I think they do feel like things could fall into place.
I will say this. I do feel like if you talk to Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, there is a lot more, I think, internal confidence seeing what the first 5.5 games looked like last year before the Andrew Thomas injury happened, that you can get a better level of play and more consistent level of play. They're a special second year of Carmen Brasillo. Basically, the same group is back again, which does help on the offensive line, that this offense can function more consistently at a higher level. Yeah,
and I think one thing that they did do last year was bringing Carmen Brasillo aboard, who's obviously got the shared background with Brian Daboll, and I think that can be an underrated thing. A lot of people would tell you that the offensive line coach is the 3rd most important assistant on the staff.
Totally agree with that.
And, having him completely synced up with what Brian Daboll wants, with the offense Brian Daboll is going to run, I think that was a big part of how they played in the first 6 games last year. And obviously, things went the wrong way after Thomas got hurt. But I'd say there aren't a lot of teams that would survive left tackle injury that way.
Right.
And so, I think that there's a lot riding on what that group looks like coming out of camp for sure.
And I think especially with the way Russell Wilson plays quarterback, right? Because you're going to run some play actions where he's going to have some deep drops. He's going to hold the football a little bit. And, Brian Daboll, I think, has gone painstakingly to a point where he's trying to really customize this offense to maximize what Russell Wilson can do. And I think getting adequate protection in front of him is really the lowest bar of things that are necessary to make this work with him as the quarterback.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's leaning in to what he does well, and obviously the deep ball is a big part of that. Using him as a runner a little bit, not like it's 10 years ago, but using him as a runner, getting him on the move and getting him playing off play action and getting the ball out of his hands. There are going to be the circumstances, like you said, where you got him taking deeper drops and you got to protect, and you're trying to get him to work to get the ball downfield, but I think there's also going to be an effort to try to get the ball out of his hands fast and get him playing fast. And there are things that I think you can go back over the years and you can see and piece together. And I think that's one of the things that's probably really encouraging for Russ, is how they are going to lean into what he does well. And he had a good year last year in Pittsburgh. When they sort of tailored the offense to what he does well and looked hard at what he did well in Seattle. And I think that you'll probably see more of that, and how Brian Daboll sets things up.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a lot of screens and RPOs in the preseason. I think that's a way to try to protect the line a little bit, get the ball out.
And that, by the way, helps
quicker.
your rookie quarterback too, because there's there's a lot of crossover there, and that's one thing that I kind of like about the way the quarterback room is set up, is that you're subtly putting in some things that Jackson Dart also has experience with from Ole Miss. So I think we all presume Dart will be the quarterback in 2026. You have it set up. You have kind of an infrastructure set up for the other 10 guys in the huddle that presumably would carry over if that transition happens.
I think the interesting thing to me, Albert, is that even though this is the 4th year of this regime, it feels new in a lot of ways because of, I think, the way Russell Wilson and just Darius Slayton referred to him as disgustingly consistent today. That was the expression that he used. And just the confidence in him, even though, again, not the player he was 10 years ago, and just his attitude and what he brings as somebody, a lot of these guys who, when they were frankly teenagers, watched win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just brought a very different energy to the building.
Yeah, I'd say like a lot of it is just setting a bar. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's the thing that he doesn't even have to really, he really doesn't have to speak that. You know, he can just do that part of it. And like that part is setting a bar for work ethic, expectation. You know, I'm gonna have some stuff that I'm gonna write about off of this that sort of illustrate that a little bit. But you know, it's on the field. It's the training part of it. It's taking care of your body. It's all of those little things that, you know, I know the Giants feel like have rubbed off on some guys here, and it's stuff that I think you only get from, you know, being a pro for as long as he has. And this is 14th year, I think I have that right.
Sure.
Makes me feel old, but
me too.
But I do think, you know, like there's an element of just the way that he handles his business for all of his flaws. Like the work ethic's never really been questioned, and you know, like I think that just as far as how he goes about his business has been good for the younger players to see that.
And I think one of the guys you mentioned, the younger guys rubbing off on players, I think one of those players is Malik Nabers, right? Heading into a second year, we've seen those guys kind of have a bond, and it's been growing a little bit. I'm not sure if Russ has ever had, he's had some great receivers now. I'm not sure he's never had a number one that can do all the different type of things that Nabers can do.
Yeah.
What do you think that connection is going to look like this year between those two?
Yeah, he's definitely a different player. I mean, you know, he had George Pickens, who's ultra talented in Pittsburgh. You know, there were other questions with Pickens, but talent was never one. Yeah, I mean, like Denver, good, not great. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy,
Metcalf, Lockhart, Baldwin.
Yeah, Lockett, Tyler Lockett.
Lockett, sorry.
Yeah, Tyler Lockett. You know, Doug Baldwin, Golden Tate, Percy Harvin. So he's had good players around him. He's had talented players around him. I do think like the relationship there is important. You know, and Malik Nabers coming off his first year, I think has a chance to be one of the best receivers in football this year. And, you know, a lot of it's going to come down again to like what happens with the other 10 guys on offense. And, you know, everybody putting him in a position to do that stuff, whether it's how the line blocks, how the run game produces positive down and distance situations, how the other receivers are able to threaten. So, you know, the defense can't overcommit to him. But I think all the talent's there, and it does sound to me like he's been really intentional about building up his relationship with Russ, which obviously is going to be a big part of whatever success they have.
The Giants Foundation will host a 5K racing kids run presented by Quest on Sunday, October 26th at 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds will benefit the Giants Foundation. All participants will receive a commemorative t-shirt. After the race, stay for a post-race festival with appearances by Giants legends and a live DJ. Register now at giants.com/5K. The Giants Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation.
Huddle up, get in here. If you're lined up here, you gotta go over the middle with it to score.
Right. How do we make that happen?
I don't know, but Citizens does.
Make sense of your money with Citizens, official bank of Eli Manning.
Giants Huddle Podcast is brought to you by Citizens, official bank of the Giants. From game day celebrations to your everyday financial needs, Big Blue fans can get the most out of every moment with Citizens. Learn more at citizensbank.com/Giants. Let's go to the defense. Albert, you mentioned building from the trenches out, and you're right. There's a lot of optimism, I think, especially from the fan base, about what this defensive front can do. How do you think Abdul Carter is going to get utilized as kind of the joker rusher? I'll use that, you know, nomenclature. He can be on the edge. He can be lined up, hand in the dirt, defensive tackle, standing up at linebacker. What kind of feel have you gotten for how they're going to utilize him?
I mean, there's nothing you can't do with him, I think, within reason. I mean, this is a guy who was an off-ball linebacker his first 2 years at Penn State, and then was perhaps the best pass rusher in America as a junior, which is a pretty impressive trick to turn. And it makes the comparisons to Micah Parsons pretty seamless, because that was sort of what Micah did, where Micah could toggle between being off the line and being on the line. And so there's a million different things you can do with him. You can move him around. And I do think having Burns and Thibodeau gives them the flexibility to do those sorts of things. Burns can play off the line as well.
Sure.
Thibodeau has less experience doing it than the other two, but I think, you can put him in some interesting situations. And so, I sort of view it as like the inverse of when you have, take an offense that's got a move tight end and a great passing game back, like what Detroit can do with Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs. When you break the huddle in Detroit, you don't know where those two guys are going to line up.
Yeah.
I sort of view this as similar, where when the Giants break the defensive huddle, they got to figure out where those guys are, and don't forget Dexter Lawrence is part of that equation either. And they're going to be able to, I think, do a lot to screw with offenses based on what they have in their defensive front.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned to me the ultimate trump card is Dexter Lawrence, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to get four hands on him. You cannot block him one-on-one.
Yeah.
And then that's going to limit, I think, what offenses can do to account for the moving pieces, right? Because you have to have four hands on Dexter Lawrence.
Right. And it's where's this guy coming from? Where's that guy coming from? You can drop a couple of them. You know what I mean? Like, so like Shane Bowen's defense has always been pretty multiple. And there is definitely some of like the old New England influence and just having the flexibility to move guys all over the place. And I do think, there are shades of what Wink did a couple of years ago, where you're able to move guys around and do different things with different guys because different guys can play different spots. And the other thing that should help there is what they hope is a much improved secondary with Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland coming aboard. And it's just that their defense is a really, really interesting group because of just the versatility of all the players involved.
Yeah, I think you took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, you're talking about moving guys around up front. I think the additions of Adebo and Holland, especially Holland, now you have two young, very intelligent safeties in Tyler Nubin and Javon Holland. Albert, I think it's going to give Shane Bowen a chance to do the type of disguising that I know a lot of NFL teams are leaning into now, right? Show one thing pre-snap, then go into something else post-snap. The Giants should have the personnel in the back end to do those types of things. When last year, they were so young, you really don't want to throw too much on these guys' plates.
Right. So I think seeing that, like, and seeing what they're going to be able to do, 100% it's going to give them a big library of things to draw from.
How many times did people mention stopping the run to you today when you talked about the Giants defense?
Yeah, obviously that's a big deal. And all the stuff we're talking about with Carter and with Thibodeau and with Burns, like, that stuff's null and void if the offense is in 2nd and 5, if the offense is in 3rd and 1.
Bingo.
So it's fun to talk about all of that stuff, but unless you can get them in those sorts of situations, there's really not a ton you can do, So stopping the run's obviously a huge part of it, and unlocking what they're able to do with those guys in the pass rush.
All right, let's go around the league a little bit. As you mentioned, you visited 26 camps over the course of the last month. What's a team that maybe you don't think enough people are talking about based on talking to people with those organizations that maybe you're like, all right, these guys are pretty confident about what they have here?
Denver, everybody's already beaten them into the ground. Just as far as like this quote unquote sneaky team that could break through. I don't think enough people are talking about Houston. I think Houston, if they can get their offensive, it's sort of interesting because there's some similarity to here, and that if they can get their offensive line right.
Do they know who their starters are yet? I know they're still messing around.
They were still fighting through it. Ursary, like the tackle from Minnesota, it looks like he's going to start. Is it at right tackle? Is it at left tackle? Where's Trent Brown's health? Where's Cam Robinson's health? Like, there's a lot of questions. So that's a big if for them. But, like, I think everything else is sort of in order there.
Yeah,
they have,
agreed.
Nico Collins, the two kids from Iowa State, Noel and Higgins, Christian Kirk, we'll see on Tank Dell. My guess is he doesn't play this year. And then, Dalton Schultz at tight end, and I think their defense is maybe the best in the NFL. With Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter, Derek Stingley, Kamari Lassiter is a young corner that they think is almost as good as Stingley.
Wow, really?
So there's that group,
Okay.
and then I'd say the other one's the Rams. And again, it's hard to kind of pluck teams that quote unquote no one is talking about, but I'm not sure the Rams have gotten enough attention. And I think when you look at their roster, what's really impressive about what they've done over the course of the last couple of years is turning it over from a team that had a core of Jalen Ramsey and
Aaron Donald.
And, on the offensive side of the ball, Cooper Kupp, and obviously Stafford's still there. But they're actually a young team
especially
now,
on defense.
It's crazy to think about. Yeah, but they've got all the guys on their front, Jared Verse, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk. So you've got this great base of young talent on their defensive front, which are one of the best in football. And then on offense, Puka Nacua is young. Tutu Atwell is still relatively young. Kyron Williams is still relatively young. Their offensive line has gotten better over the course of the last couple of years. Now, Alaric Jackson's a big one, just as far as keeping him healthy, and that was a scary deal he had. But if Stafford is upright and playing at a Matthew Stafford level, I have a hard time not seeing where that team that was, toe-to-toe with the Eagles in a snowstorm in the divisional round last year, very easily could have won that game, isn't there in the end when we get down to 8 teams, maybe when we get down to 4 teams, and I could see the Rams making the Super Bowl, so that'd be another one.
And I think it's a lot easier to break through in the NFC, right? But you stare at the AFC and looking at Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
You have some behemoths there, right? I didn't even mention Joe Burrow. You mentioned the Broncos with their great defense. The NFC, though, you could make an argument, I think, for a half dozen teams as the team that's the second best in the conference after Philadelphia.
Yeah, Philly, then you got, I would say, Washington, obviously coming off the 12-win year, NFC title game. Everybody but Chicago in the North.
Yeah, Green Bay's excellent.
Detroit, Green Bay, Minnesota. Minnesota's loaded if JJ can play.
Yep.
At a top 12 to 14 level, now that could be a Super Bowl team. Tampa's won their division 4 years in a row. And then the West, the Rams are there. The Niners, as young as they are, and they can't afford very many injuries. They've already had a bunch, but it's not hard to envision a scenario where they're a lot better in November, December than they are in September. Seattle won 10 games in Mike McDonald's first year. Arizona's come. So there are lots of teams that are in that mix. They don't have the superpowers, but there's a good amount of teams that have reason to believe that they've got a chance going into the year.
If you want to know how to manage 2 minutes of crunch time football, I'm your man. But if you're wondering about a long-term financial plan, you should talk to Citizens. Hey, I can also talk lawn care.
I'd like to learn about a mowing routine.
Yes, I knew I could help.
Make sense of your money with Citizens.
What's the formula for a team to keep no team has won the NFC East for more than one consecutive year since 2004 and knock the Eagles off? How does that happen? I think they're the most talented team. They're really good.
Yeah, I Washington will be interesting because I think Washington feels like they're a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things broke their way last year, though, and so
close games, fourth down success, stuff like that.
Do you have the breaks that they got last year? Sometimes that stuff can swing back around. You have every reason to believe in Jaden Daniels. There's no reason not to believe that that's going to keep going and keep ascending. The offensive line should be better.
Yep.
They bring in Tunsil and Connerly from Oregon, who they feel like was one of the 10 best players in the draft. They have McLaurin now back, for those who didn't see it yet, but McLaurin's back now with Debo and Jalen Lane, the rookie from Virginia Tech. The young running back that they have looks like he can play, which made Brian Robinson expendable. And then defensively, the corner situation has gotten a lot better. And Trey Amos coming aboard, Mikey Sanders still coming into his second year. Marshawn Lattimore's healthy now. My one question would be where they're going to generate the pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not 100% is that going to be, is Dan Quinn going to be able to find ways to generate a pass rush based on the strength of their secondary? Are they going to get creative in doing that? With guys, like Deron Payne, they're very high on Javon Kinlaw, who comes over from the Jets and was with San Francisco. But they're probably the team. If you look at the other 3 in the division, probably the team that's got the best shot to knock the Eagles off. And the Eagles, by the way, for whatever it's worth, I didn't realize this. It didn't hit me until I was there. But they're turning over almost half their starting lineup on defense, which a lot of people miss that and think they're just running it back this year. But there are a lot of new faces there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And they talk about turning over a defense and turning it into a young defense. They have a very young defense now.
Yeah, they do.
Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell and Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith. They're all young.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, but they are replacing some guys, and they, Josh Sweat's gone. Brandon Graham's gone.
Milton Williams.
Yeah, Milton Williams is gone. In the secondary, Darius Slay's gone. Yep. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's gone. So there's a good amount of players that played important roles for them last year that aren't there anymore. again, it's the Eagles, so I think they'll figure it out, but that's not nothing.
Final question. As you go around the league, trends on offense and defense, as you've seen teams talk about schematically in ways the league is turning on both sides of the ball, what are some of the common threads that you've heard from DCs, OCs, players around the league for maybe what fans can anticipate seeing on the field this year that might be a little different in terms of trends?
Yeah, I mean, I think like on offense, it's probably the positionless thing that I was talking about, that like, you know, and you use the word joker. Like I think the idea of, you know, RJ Harvey in Denver, Evan Ingram in Denver, Travion Henderson in New England, you know, some of these guys that can be jacks of all trades within offenses. Tyler Warren in Indianapolis is going to be really, really interesting. I think they're gonna snap the ball to him some. So the idea of like positionless football and moving guys around on offense, like I think that's continuing to grow. I mean, defensively, it's just, I would say a lot of the good teams, a lot of the best teams are really investing in the secondary, which I think is interesting. Like Baltimore's the one that sticks out in my head, thinking about, because of what they've got. They got 5 first-round picks starting in the secondary for them: Kyle Hamilton and Malachi Starks at safety, and then Marlon Humphrey, Nate Wiggins, and Jair Alexander at corner.
That's pretty good.
But you look at the investment like with a lot of the contenders, you know, and you know, the Chiefs have been really good over the last few years in the secondary. Now they're replacing Justin Reed, but they're going to pay Trent McDuffie, whether it's this year, next year. I'd say probably next year. You know, I like the you know, Buffalo is like, now they've paid Christian Benford and they've continued to use draft picks in the secondary. You know, the Eagles, obviously, like the two young guys had such a huge impact there. You mentioned Mitchell and DeJean. I'd say an interesting trend would be like how a lot of the best teams are really investing in their secondaries, which, I mean, I think that there's something there just in, it's not just having top shelf players, it's like the depth across the board. Even like Denver, like they have 2 really solid, I mean, the best corner in football and Patrick Surtain, but then opposite him, they've got Riley Moss, who they feel great about, and yet they're still taking Jedi Barron from Texas in the first round.
Right.
There are lots of examples of that.
Interesting. Albert, the floor is yours. Tell the folks where to find all your great written and audio and video content.
Yeah, I like all the stuff at SI, TV, radio, all of that. There are a million places you can find me. I'm not hard to find.
Amazon again, Thursdays.
Yeah.
You're back.
Yeah. So I have
Awesome.
we have a lot going on in the fall for sure.
Well, I'm sure maybe you will be breaking news on a Thursday. You know, we'll see coming up here as we get ready for these. And Albert, good stuff, man. I really appreciate it as always. Albert Breer and the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens Official Bank of the Giants, from the Hackensack Marine Hill podcast studio. Keep getting better. We'll see you next time, everybody.